All right, today we're diving into a white paper that makes a pretty stunning claim that a government lawyer in Victoria actually cheated in court, and the system just let it happen. We're not just talking about a simple legal dispute here. According to this analysis, it's a story about a really profound failure of justice. So let's get right into it.
I mean, this question really gets to the absolute heart of the matter, doesn't it? We're not talking about some clever legal loophole or a sharp tactic here. No, this is about what happens when the very people meant to guard the law are accused of breaking its most fundamental rules.
Okay, so let's start with the person at the center of this whole analysis. Who is he, and what exactly is he being accused of?
So the case is Brown versus the state of Victoria. Representing the state, you have Dr. Nicholas Petrie, who's a barrister for the Victorian Government Solicitor's Office. You'll see it called the VGSO. Now, his job was to defend the state, right? But according to this white paper, it's the way he did that job that's now effectively on trial.
And whoa, here are the core allegations. The analysis makes it really clear this wasn't just a one-off mistake. No, the white paper alleges a whole pattern of misconduct. We're talking about relying on testimony that was known to be false, intentionally dragging out the case, hiding crucial evidence, and at the end of the day, abusing the power of his office, which led to a serious violation of human rights.
And look, this isn't just speculation. The analysis points to a judge's own observations made in court, confirming that key testimony was, in fact, false. And how did they know? Well, it was directly contradicted by CCTV footage. That's right, video evidence that the white paper alleges was deliberately suppressed. So this is where the story really broadens out. The white paper argues that this isn't just about one lawyer's alleged actions. It's about the entire system that might have allowed it to happen in the first place. Let's dig into that. The analysis uses a really powerful phrase to describe this: institutional rot. It's this idea that the problems run way deeper than just one person. It's about a system that's lacking oversight, where there's no real accountability, and eventually a culture develops, where unethical behavior just gets tolerated, maybe even becomes the norm.
So you might be wondering, how does something like this even happen? Well, the white paper points to 4 major systemic failures. First up, a serious lack of oversight. Basically, nobody was watching the watchers. That led to what they call a systemic tolerance for bad behavior. Then, you've got the rules that government lawyers are supposed to follow, the model litigant guidelines, which were apparently just ignored. And finally, and this one is huge, legal privilege, which is meant to be a shield for clients, was allegedly weaponized to hide the misconduct.
You know, the analysis uses a great analogy to make this crystal clear. Picture a highway with no speed limits and no police patrols. What's going to happen? Pretty soon, reckless driving just becomes the norm. That's the argument here. Without any real enforcement or oversight, the misconduct just became standard operating procedure. And we need to be clear, this alleged misconduct wasn't just some technicality, some dusty legal rule being broken. The analysis argues it had a very real, very human cost. It was a violation of legally protected human rights.
This really breaks it down. The right to a fair hearing? The paper says that was violated by using false testimony. What about equality before the law? Well, that was compromised by tactics that basically created an unfair fight. And this is so important, the protection from cruel treatment. This wasn't about physical harm. It was about the severe emotional and psychological distress caused by dragging out the litigation using what the paper alleges were false narratives. And believe it or not, the scope of these allegations goes even wider than Victoria. The white paper argues that these actions also put Australia in breach of its international human rights commitments. We're talking about things like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So this suddenly elevates the whole thing from a domestic issue to a matter of global concern. Okay, so after detailing all of these massive problems, the white paper doesn't just leave it there. It actually lays out a blueprint for reform. It's a plan to fix what the analysis calls a pretty broken system. The solution they propose is basically a two-pronged attack. First, you've got personal accountability, holding the actual individuals involved responsible, but just as important are the big-picture systemic reforms, to fix that institutional rot we talked about and make sure this can't happen again. The paper's really clear. You need both. One without the other just won't work. So when it comes to personal accountability, the proposed consequences are pretty severe. We're talking disciplinary action which could even lead to disbarment. Then there's the possibility of actual criminal charges for misconduct in public office. On top of that, financial penalties. And finally, a formal public apology.
All right,
Now for the system itself. The reforms here are all structural. Step 1. Set up an independent watchdog to provide some real oversight. Step 2. Make ethics and human rights training mandatory. Step 3. Strengthen protections for whistleblowers, because they're absolutely crucial for exposing this kind of stuff. And Step 4. Bring in new technology to safeguard the integrity of the whole process.
And that tech solution they propose is pretty fascinating. It's blockchain. The idea is to create this tamper-proof digital ledger for every single piece of evidence. The key word here is immutable, meaning nothing can be deleted or changed without leaving a permanent digital footprint. The paper suggests this could make it basically impossible for anyone to suppress or mess with crucial evidence, like that CCTV footage, ever again.
Okay, so let's zoom out. Why does one single legal case in Victoria deserve this much attention? Well, as the white paper argues, it's because the implications here are absolutely enormous.
At the end of the day, this is why this one case matters so much. When a government's own lawyer is accused of cheating and the system itself is accused of letting it happen, it's not just about one person's rights anymore. It's about the public's trust in the entire justice system. In fact, the analysis calls this case a litmus test. It's one of those moments that reveals the true state of integrity in public office. The paper argues that how this case is handled from here on out will show everyone what the state's real commitment to justice and human rights actually is. And all of this leaves us with one final, absolutely essential question. It's really the core takeaway from the whole analysis. If a justice system can't hold its own guardians accountable, then who can? And that's a question not just for lawyers or politicians. It's for all of us who rely on that system to be fair, to be transparent, and ultimately to be just.